Hey guys, Diane here with the GreenEyed Monster Review, and today I have some recent reads for you. This is just some books that I've recently read that I figured, we could talk about. So hit that like and subscribe button, leave me a comment, and we'll get into it. Okay, so I figured I would start this list off on the bottom. So my least favorite read. So that is The Chill by Mary Sangiovanni. And this book I was pretty excited for. I had found it on my library app. So I was like, okay, cool. It's free too. But this is supposed to be a mix between a Lovecraftian cosmic horror with The True Detectives, with hopefully the first season is what I was thinking. So in this book, you have an occult specialist, and she's supposed to specialize in, ritualistic murders and things like that. Well, she's brought in because in this small town, they're having a slew of ritualistic murders. On top of that, they're also having this random snowstorm in the middle of May. And so they are finding links between the two, and somehow they're connected. And so the story just goes from there as to why all these things are happening and how it's being ushered in by the townspeople. And so I thought this was going to be a pretty solid book. I thought it was going to be really entertaining and just, dark in the best way. And it wasn't. It felt very just like a jumble of things that could have been really great, but it just ended up missing the mark. And I didn't like the relationships between the occult specialist and the detective. It felt very unprofessional in some ways, and it just felt like it didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. They didn't feel very genuine to me. And so I just kind of shut myself off and just kind of sped through this book. I gave this probably 5 stars, and that's probably being a little generous because it just missed the mark. Okay, so next we have A History of Fear by Luke Dumas, and this is about a guy. He has been convicted of murdering one of his friends in college. He'd actually confessed to it, and they end up finding him in his jail cell. He's hung himself, and he's left a note, kind of like a manuscript of what really happened, and basically saying, hey, the devil made me do it, which he said from the beginning of his trial. He said that he's been having this entity follow him, and that's really what drove him, or what made him, kill this other person. And you just go, it's kind of a culmination of going through his diary, but you're also going through manuscripts from the court and things like that, and you're talking to his family and his friends, and you're trying to kind of piece the story together. And I thought this was a really addictive story, to where you're kind of going, you're almost a detective, and you're trying to piece everything together to figure out what the truth is, because you're hearing from his perspective, but you're also hearing a complete different perspective from other people that were in the same situation. And it's a little bit of an unreliable narrator, which I don't always like, but this one I felt like did it really well, did it really seamless. So I really enjoyed that. I gave this 7 stars because I felt like it could have probably been a little more original in some sort of way, but yeah, overall, it was a pretty good book, and I did like it. I read this probably in just a few days because it was really easy to read. And then we have Agents of Dreamland by Caitlin Kernan. And this was just a random read we ended up picking up. My husband listened to it with me. And this is about a special agent in the FBI. His name is the Signalman. And he is meeting up with this woman in a cafe in Arizona. And they are kind of they're kind of swapping information about something that's happened recently in his past. And there's also a cult somewhere. And you're trying to kind of figure out how they're connected and what each other is doing, how that is going to affect the future. And this is just a very intricately woven story, especially for, I think it's only maybe a few hundred pages. It was only 3 or 4 hours on Audible, but it was a very interconnected story, and it was I had to rewind it a few times because at first hearing some of the things that they were saying, I was like, what does that even mean? But it was really good. I felt like it was a good balance between kind of like a cosmic mystery versus how it's placed in the real world. So I really did enjoy that. And I gave Agents of Dreamland 8 stars. And then we have Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valentine. And that's such an obnoxious way to spell Catherine. When I saw that, I was like, you know what? She would spell her name that way. Just judging by the story, I feel like that says a lot about her. But this was a book I, yet again, picked up randomly. And this is about a woman, and she lives in sort of like a Stepford Wives reality where everything's kind of perfect. She's perfect, you know, perfect hair, the perfect house, and she really dotes on her husband. Her husband is almost a character in the background. You hear more about him versus seeing his thoughts and things at the beginning of the book. And I don't want to say too much about this book because, yet again, this is pretty short. And as the story progresses, you're piecing together what it might be. And I really don't want to ruin that for you because it is, like I said, it's pretty short. So it's not going to take a whole lot of time for you to get there. But this book was, for me, it was a tad bit uncomfortable. It was different. I gave this a 7 out of stars just because it was a little uncomfortable, but it was unique. It was a unique story, I'll say that. So next we have A Lush and Seething Hell, Two Tales of Cosmic Horror. So the first story is about a professor, and he is kind of living in exile. He lives in a dictatorship, and he's really been trying to translate this document that he's found. It's very ominous. It kind of brings about weird happenings in his life, and you're following him. You're also following a friend of his who is trying to kind of help him out and trying to figure out really what is this document about. And so you're kind of going along both those paths, and you're trying to figure out if they will connect and how and what that means for the fate of his country. And this story is really well written. I found that I was really intertwined in both of the timelines that they had. It was very strange, and I really liked that. So that was a really good one. Okay, and then the next story is about a librarian. He finds this tape, and it's very strange. He's like, okay, this feels very demonic to me. And so he's really trying to figure out where it came from and how it came about. And this really kind of wreaks havoc on his life, brings him to some realizations that he didn't even know he was looking for. And the second one I really loved. I really loved the second one. It kind of delves into the Deep South and how the lore surrounding it, and it just really took you to some places that you didn't think you were going to go, and I really enjoyed that one. And then and that one, so the first story I gave 7 stars, and the second story I gave 8 stars just because I just enjoyed the second one more. And then we have Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier, and this is a book about a young woman. It starts off, she's in prison. She's been there, or she's going to be there for about 5 years. She's murdered her best friend. And it also follows her while she's in prison, and then once she gets out. And once she gets out, murders start happening that are very similar to the one that she had helped commit when she was a teenager. And so this book kind of throws you for a few loops. It's more of I would say this is more of a generalization of a thriller. You know, it hits those tropes of, you know, she's a young, beautiful woman and she's in jail. You know, that kind of thing, which wasn't bad. I did enjoy this book. It's very easy to get through. It's one of those, I relate these type of thrillers with like reality TV. It's very entertaining and it's easy to get through, but it's not going to be something that's really going to kind of like stick with you and just really make you think. But it was pretty good. I gave it 7 stars. And then this is my favorite recent read, actually, The Nightmare Man by J.H. Markert. And this book was really good. I really enjoyed this. So this is about an author, and there is a connection between his books and a slew of murders that are happening. Very simplistic overview of that book, but this was so good and it was so atmospheric. It's more set in the fall, and typically I like to read, you know, fall books in the fall, but I'm just ready for Halloween, so I was like, you know what, screw it, I'm going to read it now. And there were some tropes in here that I really enjoy. I really enjoy when it is almost a detective crime book that's, you know, trying to figure out what's going on versus the supernatural and how they collide. And that's one of my favorite kind of books to read. And this one, it wrote a fine line of what is realistic in true crime versus what is fun and supernatural. So I really enjoyed this book. I gave this 8 stars, and I'm probably going to do a review of it on its own just because I enjoyed it very much. So those are my recent reads. You know, hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you've read any of those or if I made you want to read any of those, and hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.